Hey guys, Disclaimer Magic here, and it's time to show off my new deck. This is not the best deck in the world, it's just fun to play. I mean, it's certainly difficult and annoying to play against. It can win, but there's a lot better decks out there. It's just, if you're like, yeah, that looks like fun, then hey, build it. Better decks to come though, but this is really funny because it only has literally 3 cards, and they're all the same card, from Kaladesh. So a ton of the cards from Dragons and Origins, which have now cycled out, would have made this deck way more powerful. So I probably should have built this a long time ago, but oh well. I mean, it's good. I mean, I fought it against my decks and it wins the majority of the time, so it's not that bad. What it basically does is called Gravity Bomb. What it does is it pins down their creatures forever. So obviously you would get better mileage out of like having Isochron Scepter in it, but that's not legal in standard. So gotta do the best we can. It does run out of cards at a certain point, but you'll see why that's not a big problem. So let's just go in order here. I am doing this a little bit different than the normal way that I show off a deck, just because this program, which, oh my god, stop asking, it's called Xmage. It's an alternative to MTGO, and it's completely free. You should definitely test and build your decks on it because it's awesome. And that's what all my gameplay is in, too. So let's start with Chilling Grasp. This one's huge. Now, it costs 3, so, you know, not the cheapest, but it does tap up to 2 target creatures, and then they don't untap during their controller's next untap step. And it's an instant. That's why it's the second most powerful card in the entire deck. And that won't make any sense until you see the actual gameplay. Then we got Containment Membrane, the number 1 most important and most powerful card in the deck. It has Surge 1, so as long as you cast something, you can cast this. Now, you enchant a target creature, and it doesn't untap during its controller's untap step, but the spell itself doesn't actually tap the creature. But that's totally not a problem, especially if you, like, mix it with Chilling Grasp. If you have 4 mana, you could cast both of these because that's how Surge works. Next up, we've got Geralf's Masterpiece because, you know, you have to win eventually, so there's 2 big bombers in here, and that's one of them. He's a 7/7, and he gets -1/-1 for each card in your own hand. You pretty much will not have cards in hand, like, very quickly because you're tapping and summoning creatures. So by the time you have 5 mana, usually this guy is 5/5 or bigger, and he's in the air. So very, very nice creature. One of my absolute favorites. It's probably the most powerful blue creature in Standard right now. I'm just going to skip over to this one. Guardian of Tazeem, the other 4/5 flyer for 5. He's, you know, comparable to Geralf's Masterpiece, I guess. He has flying, you know, so that's huge. He's going to hit. And Landfall. So whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, tap target creature an opponent controls. If that land is an island, which, well, you're looking at the deck list, that creature doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. So there's 3 levels of tapping, and I'll demonstrate that in the gameplay video. So these guys, they hit hard. They can block in the air, stall, you know, finish the person off, whatever. I mean, they're just huge. Then we've got a Grip of the Roil. I do like the surge value of 2. That's pretty nice. Otherwise, it costs 3. It is an instant, which is super important. And it only taps 1 creature. It doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. And then you draw a card. So that's pretty huge. I mean, the whole card draw thing, it really keeps you going because you're going to be top decking pretty quickly. And here's a boatload of islands. And then the other land is the Skyline Cascade. That one comes in tapped, so that sucks. It's not an island, so that sucks. But it generates blue, and target creature an opponent controls just by itself doesn't untap during controller's next untap step. So the land itself doesn't actually tap them unless you've got Guardians of Tazeem out, and then it does. Or if they're already tapped. So I just thought, throw it in. It's pretty good. It does seem to work. It doesn't seem too intrusive. Next up, we've got Nebelgast Herald. This is a 2/1 flyer with flash, which is unbelievably important. Most of these creatures are flying, which means they're almost guaranteed to hit, and you could just choose to tap down the flyers and then just out-hit your opponent. Most of the time, they will not untap a creature and swing at you the entire game. I am not kidding. It's that bad. That's why I called it Gravity Bomb and not yay tappy tappy tap fest. It's got to sound menacing because it's powerful. Now, when Nebelgast Herald or another spirit enters the battlefield under your control, tap target creature. So it's not very good because if you do it on your turn, oh, they lost a blocker, and then during their next untap step, they do get to untap it, but it has flash. So if you flash it in during their untap step or their upkeep or, whatever, then you can tap down their creature and it can't swing that turn. So it's kind of the same thing as casting it on your own turn without flash and then having it skip the next untap phase. So, it's decent. It does cost 3, but it's not bad. I do like that it says whenever another spirit enters the battlefield under your control, you can do it again, though, so don't miss that. Not that many spirits in here. Pretty much next one is it. Niblis of Frost, a.k.a. Mr. Nibbles. I absolutely love him. You knew I couldn't leave him out of a deck. He's a 3/3 flyer for 4. He has prowess, which is huge. It's humongous. And whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, tap target creature an opponent controls doesn't untap during its next untap step. So that's pretty cool because you can get a 2-for-1 special on all of the tap spells. Do keep in mind that if you cast an enchantment like Containment Membrane, prowess will go off because that's a non-creature spell, but you won't get the secondary effect because that's not prowess, that's instant or sorcery only. Do not screw that up. Next up, we've got Rush of Ice. Tap target creature doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step, and Awaken 3 for 5, which is nice because, as you can see, there's 23 lands in this deck, just so you can get to 5 in a reasonable amount of time. And then after that, you start dropping in lands to get the landfall effect off of Tazeem. But Rush of Ice, you really don't want to pay just 1 if you've got 5 mana. Drop it in, turn a land into a 3/3. I mean, why not? Start hitting them with it. I've been able to get the Awaken off almost every time that this was in my hand. It does suck that it's a sorcery. It's one of the weaker spells, but, having a 3/3 creature is really, really important. So it's kind of like Nebelgast Herald on steroids, because, it's bringing in a creature and also tapping something. Next up, we've got the only Kaladesh card, Select for Inspection, and this doesn't really need to be in the deck. It's probably the weakest card in it. It's interesting, but it might fuel their Enter the Battlefield deck if they have something like that. So you might be giving them an extra, couple energy counters or something. You return target tapped creature, so it has to be tapped, to its owner's hand. Scry 1. So it's dirt cheap. It's an instant. You can do it after they declare it as an attacker, and the Scry 1 is huge. I only put 3 in because it's just not that good. If you really wanted, you could eliminate Kaladesh completely and replace this with 3 copies of Retreat to Coral Helm, which obviously already, was in the deck and then cut. It was very narrow. That one is the Landfall enchantment. You throw it out, and whenever a land enters the battlefield, you can either tap a target creature, and I think I got rid of it because it doesn't stay tapped, and you have to drop it a land on your own turn. So unless you feel like throwing in Evolving Wilds for almost no reason, it's just not good enough. It only gets rid of them for 1/2 turn, basically, or your turn, 1/2 turn cycle. That's it. So this seemed more effective because if they started throwing equipment or enchantments or something on it, kaboom, or counters especially. But this would be the one I would probably pull in case of the sideboard. Then we've got Stitched Mangler. I do like this one because it's a 2/3. It's a zombie horror, whatever. It doesn't really come up. But when it enters the battlefield, it enters tapped. And then you can tap a target creature an opponent controls. That creature doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. So, it's just a creature mixed with a spell for 3. I mean, there's nothing too special about it. So that's the whole deck. It just keeps everything tapped. Now, even me looking at it right now, I would say, well, this doesn't work. This is a stupid deck. It doesn't work. Watch for the gameplay footage video because that's definitely going to clear things right up for you. There's something that you're probably not thinking about when it comes to the phases, and I'm going to go up against a deck, which would be a nightmare against this deck. A whole bunch of dirt cheap, small creatures because, you got to tap every single one, and there's no way to mass tap. So you're going to see why this deck actually is really, really powerful. Now, as far as a sideboard, I really wanted Displacement Wave, but it's not legal. Returns stuff to hand based on its mana cost or something like that. Very, very, very powerful against tokens. There might be something like it. I honestly just didn't research the sideboard that much, because sideboards should kind of be specific to what you find other people at your FNM playing. But Dampening Pulse would be pretty funny, because it's, I think it costs 4 to get out. It's an enchantment. It just sits out there. It's not an aura. It's just an enchantment. And all opponent's creatures get -1 attack forever. So that's pretty funny. If they're running 1/1 servos, that's it. And if they're just flooding the battlefield with too many creatures and you can't tap them all, just permanently remove their attack power. And if you can get 2 out in a game, the game's over. I mean, the -2 across the board, they can't swing with anything. Not against your Geralf's Masterpiece and your Guardian of Tazeem. Honestly, Stitch Mangler's pretty big too. And Niblis of Frost is pretty big too. I mean, it's hard to swing against this deck. The other one that I would definitely put in the sideboard is Encase in Ice. It's basically the same as Containment Membrane, but for 2, but it only works on a red or green permanent. So it taps it down and keeps it tapped. Claustrophobia, of course, not legal right now, otherwise that would be a good choice. And those are the only 2 I have right now. I mean, you might put in like a Negate or something, you know. I'm actually not sure Negate is legal right now. Like, believe it or not. I'd have to check on that. That would be weird, because that's I believe the 2nd most common printed card ever. Oh, no, 6th. Yeah, pretty sure. You got to count the lands, and like the mountain was printed more. Just look it up. It's a funny story. So definitely watch out. Right after this, I'm going to have a gameplay video that's going to clear this right up, because this deck does not play the way you think it does. So I'll see you guys very shortly next video.